Hi, I'm Nita Sweeney. I'm an author and a lot of other things, but what I want to share with you today are some tips I've learned through my own life and sharing with others about healing your mind. Um, does your mind need to be healed? I don't know. Mine often does. Depends on the day. So I chose three. There are many. I chose the three that have worked the best for me, and you may find something different. So, part of what I suggest is exploring what works for you. So, the first thing I want to talk about is writing. You may have heard of writing practice, which is a term coined by the best selling author Natalie Goldberg, who I studied with for many years. Some people also call this free writing or morning pages, which was a term coined by Julia Cameron, another best-selling author. And journaling, anything that gets the thoughts swirling from your mind out onto the page. Now, I use writing practice because I appreciate the tradition of meditation, which I'm actually going to talk a little bit about later. And writing practice is a structure for getting the words down within a timed period. So you actually use a timer. And let me explain a little bit about why this works. I'll just say there's many rules of writing practice, which you can look at Natalie's books for those. But the one that is the most important is keep your hand moving. So you set a timer. Um, Usually I start with 10 minutes with the people I coach because that's a relatively non-terrifying period of time, let's just say. And you set that timer, and for the entire 10 minutes, you write. You do not cross out. Um, if you're typing, you do not backspace. You don't worry about punctuation, grammar, anything like that. And the rule is keep your hand moving. Now, why is that important? So imagine that there are two parts of the brain. There is the more logical side. We call it the left brain. Um, my image isn't mirrored, so you may actually be seeing this on the right, but this is my left hand. Um, and then on the right side of the brain is a more childlike, spontaneous, creative part of the mind. And often in our education system and in our lives, those two parts of the mind get intertwined and locked. And what happens is when you sit down to do nearly anything, part of your mind becomes anxious. And so let's say if you're writing, for example, you want to write a story about a magical unicorn who's a barista who's trying to save the planet, da 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 da. This part of your mind starts writing and it wants to be creative and spontaneous. But this other part, the more logical part, the one that taught you about outlining, that in school they taught you about outlining, the part of the brain that is more critical, that is concerned with what people think, also with what's marketable, what will sell. This part will hear that. So this part starts talking about the magical unicorn, and all you get down are two or three words, and this logical part goes, nope, we're not going there. Have you looked in the bookstores lately? Do you have any idea how many books there are about unicorns already? And what will your mother think? And people are going to think you're a tree hugger. Not that that's a bad thing, but this logical part, tree hugger books don't sell, whatever. Actually, they do. So you have to keep these separated. So when you keep your hand moving, here's what happens. This part is writing about the magical unicorn. And this part is chattering away about all the reasons this isn't going to work. But if you keep this hand moving, this part will never catch it. It may be talking the whole time, but if you keep your hand moving, it will not make you stop. And what this does is over time, you create a pattern in your brain. You're actually reprogramming your neural pathways. That's one of the more recent um, discoveries, neuroplasticity in brain science, is that our brains are quite malleable. Doesn't seem like a big surprise to me, given all the learning that we do. But because of that, we can actually retrain ourselves. And by continuing to do the writing or whatever other activity you want to pursue without stopping, even despite this voice continuing to ramble on and on, you retrain your mind that that is a safe activity because we're really fighting anxiety a lot of the time. The mental health issues tend to clump into depression and anxiety. Now, I'm giving you my disclaimer. I'm a lawyer. I don't practice anymore, but I'm not a mental health professional. So if you have a major issue that you can't crawl out of, please seek help for that. What I'm talking about are more everyday problems that most people face. And I face them too. I have the same struggle as many people. So that's a technique I use. And what happens when I'm able to use that technique is actually many things. But one is I find out things I didn't even know I thought. I come to conclusions or I find interests that if I were locked in the more conscious, logical brain, they wouldn't bubble up. But that practice of just keeping the hand moving helps me discover myself in a new way. And that also helps heal my mind because over the years, I found that I'm so much larger than I ever thought I was. I mean, we kind of can get in these little boxes. Oh, I'm this. Oh, I'm that. And by sitting down with a pen, very simply, I prefer writing by hand, and there's a lot of science behind that, which I'm not going to go into right now. But by pouring that out onto the page, we have this expansive freedom. It actually kind of blows the doors off of things. We can go deeper, wider, higher, broader on that page. And so I really urge you to find some kind of practice in writing. Some people love the bullet journals. Um, I've tried it a little bit. You know, they're lovely. I like the wildness of writing practice. I mean, sometimes if I'm doing writing practice and I feel myself stuck, I'll actually turn the notebook sideways and write against the lines just to break out of that logic, that A, B, C, 1 plus 1 equals 2. Now that comes in handy in a lot of areas in life, especially in writing, revision, very important, and safety in other parts of life, health, especially right now where we're having to be very careful about safety guidelines. But in my heart, I need that freedom. I need that space to open up and be as free as I can. And the page is a very safe space to go all those places, sometimes the really scary places. The other thing that I've learned, Natalie says go for the jugular, but I say blow up the boundaries, blow out the walls. And so when I'm writing, when I'm doing this writing practice, if I come upon something that feels scary or maybe shameful or makes me angry, maybe I don't want to go there. Um, and some days I won't, but I often will go ahead and put those words down. I can burn them later. Doesn't everybody have a fire pit in the backyard? Burn them later, but get them out because if not, they're in the mind, swirling around, kind of on top of the other things. And so, what really wants to percolate up is blocked by these other things that we don't want to think about. So, that's my kind of first tidbit is writing. It's so simple, but you can make it an amazing healing practice. Now, the second one, which is the structure on which writing practice is based, I talked about them in the opposite order because as a writer, writing practice is probably the one closest to my heart. But I want to talk about meditation. There are millions of forms of meditation. And how does meditation help heal your mind? Again, we go to neuroplasticity. You can retrain your mind. I prefer and have found most effective insight or mindfulness meditation, sometimes a little bit of Zen, but I'm not going to go into all that. It doesn't have to be anything um, particular, to a particular philosophy. It's just the practice of bringing my mind back. I'll use the writing as an example because that is a meditation. Let's say I've chosen to write about my mother's jewelry. Let's say that's the topic I've chosen, because sometimes I use a topic so the blank page isn't so terrifying. If I get lost and feel like I'm down a rabbit hole with the writing, I will just go back and write the words my mother's jewelry, or I remember my mother's jewelry, again and again and again. So in the meditation I practice, I tend to use the breath, especially when I teach, because everyone breathes. So it's a very easy, common thing to be able to say, where do you notice your breath? And that's where we start. Just where do you notice your breath? Is it at your nose? Is it like across your lips? Maybe your chest? Is it down in your belly? No, all the way down in your belly? And just notice that first. That's where I start because that's where it's so simple. So that's the first thing. Part of what we're trying to do is develop concentration. Again, that's a way to heal the mind because we get distracted and can't accomplish the things we want to, have difficulty in relationships because we're distracted. There's a lot of things that problems distraction creates that we don't even realize. If you kind of go through your day and think about, wow, where did I get off track and how did that happen? Have you ever driven home from someplace and not remembered? You've just gone on autopilot. So we have to live on autopilot some of the time, but that ability to bring ourselves back again and again is a great skill and helps heal the mind. So when I sit, I tend to sit. I sit in a chair. I sat on a the meditation cushion for many years, and now I choose to sit in a chair. Just so it feels more accessible and I don't know, less. I don't know what it is, but it just feels very accessible to me to just sit in a chair. Um, and I try to maintain an upright posture. I sometimes keep my eyes open but focused down and just notice where I'm breathing. Now, here's the thing that often confuses the people I work with, because I both coach people and teach classes and work with people, in manuscripts and other creative projects. Some people seem to think that they're supposed to be able to just calm the mind, that the mind should just be controllable. Well, the mind's job is to think thoughts. So when I sit, my mind is going to begin to generate thoughts. And especially if I'm sitting still, it might actually think, hey, she's got her eyes closed, she's sitting still, time to go to sleep. Um, and so my job in meditation is to just gently bring my mind back to my breath, because my mind will wander or it will dull. Those are the two things that happen with me most often. I will get, swirling thoughts, or I'll be off to the grocery store, making the list before I know it, or, next writing project, whatever. And before I know it, I'm lost. So the practice is to hold my attention with equanimity, gentle, gentle, like I'm training a child or training, a puppy. Um, I'm not going to be mean. I'm not going to yell or be angry. And that's what my history is to be very angry at myself. So instead, when I notice my mind wander, I gently bring it back to the breath. And I say, oh, isn't that interesting? My mind is doing its job. It's generating thoughts. And over time, my mind will gradually quiet. But I can't force it to quiet. I can create the conditions for it to become quiet on its own by sitting still, by returning my attention to the breath again and again, and making that interesting and fun, being curious, bringing an attitude of curiosity to the sitting meditation. So that's my second way that I work with healing my mind. The third way is through movement. For me, that's running. Not everybody wants to be a marathoner, should be a marathoner. I happen to be a marathoner, and that for me is a very special time. The time that I take for myself, that I say, this is Nita's time, and um, and I move my body. It does so many things. I mean, there's the physical level. Um, we often hear about endorphins, but there's actually it's endocannabinoids. It's the same same neurotransmitters that are processed with, like medical marijuana, all that kind of stuff, cannabis. Um, that's what happens. That's why we get that little bit of kind of, you hear it runner's high. But that's generated by the physical activity. So you get a sense of calm and peace, but you have to get your heart rate up a little bit. Again, don't have to be a sprinter, don't have to be a marathoner, don't have to run. You could walk, you could dance. Some people tell me they get it from singing, maybe aerobics, lifting weights, but it has to be something that raises your heart rate enough that your body begins to generate those neurotransmitters. For me, there's also the benefit of having a training plan. I like structure, and having the training plan and saying, okay, I'm going to run this many miles today, and being able to check that off. I get a little dopamine hit. Um, Seeing the marks on the training plan over time. These are such simple little things that are often overlooked. We don't have to go into some big thing. Just be right with the training plan. Say, an experience can, if you've been meditating, when you make that check mark, experience the pleasant body sensations that happen from checking off 3 miles, whatever. Um, I remember when I was training for my first 5K, that was uh, that was such a pleasure to have that training plan pasted. I actually taped it to the end of a bookcase, and watching the progress, I kind of amazed myself. I started running. I was almost 50 when I took up running, and I was 51 when I ran my first full marathon. Um, but I know, people of all ages, especially right now, who are just thinking, what do I need that's different? What can I try that's a change? So this is such a great opportunity to look for some form of movement. Movement powerful enough, strenuous enough to get your heart up a little bit. Now, as I age, I have to watch things like my cortisol levels. And so I actually do low heart rate training. So there's a window that I try to keep my heart rate in. Maybe you're not, you don't want to be that nerdy about it, about crunching all the numbers. I kind of like the data on my watch, and I have my little Fitbit and all that kind of stuff, and my, Garmin watch. But just noticing the day after, do I feel better? Do I feel exhausted? Because I know for me, if I'm running too far, too fast, too hard, um, it's like the benefit decreases. So there's a balance. So how does this help the mind? Well, bathing my mind in those neurotransmitters, it's so wonderful. Um, there's a lot of anti-aging benefits to exercise. There's a lot of mental health benefits. I'll just say for me, at one point in my life, I was on 6 medications. I was still on, I think, 4 when I started running, and now I take one, and the dose has been divided. I mean, it's been reduced so much that I have to take a liquid form because they don't make a pill small enough. I have to still take it, a tiny dose. And the only thing that my medical professionals can attribute that to is the running. So I just encourage you to explore, find, is it yoga for you? Is it dance? Um, because I'm at the place in my life where if it's not fun, it's just not worth doing. And I know for me that running has been the thing I have stayed with the longest. And we've tried a lot of things. We have the mini trampoline, we have the, I won't go into all of them, but, and nothing against mini trampolines. Lots of people enjoy them. But I've been through a cycle of different movement forms, and there's something about the running. The other thing about movement is if you can find some kind of community, it's a little difficult right now, but there are tons of online groups for any type of exercise community. Um, I don't want to use the exercise, let's call it movement. But any of the movement types has a community. And when you find people that get joy from the same thing that brings you joy, then there's a fellowship that's created. And that sense of community is another way you heal your mind because we're not really alone. Even, if we're isolating or, sheltering in place or just trying to um, maintain distance there's lots of reasons we might be doing that. There's a need for community. There's a need for a fellowship. This group of women that I'm actually doing this presentation for, all of you, I feel a sense of kinship with you, a community, a like-mindedness. And so when you find a modality that works for you, and that's true across all three of these tools that I've offered. Writing, there's so many writing groups, meditation, all kinds of meditation groups, and everything is online now. So you can dabble, you can find ones that work for you. Same thing with movement. Find a group that is there to support you in the way you need. I have one friend that needs a challenge. She needs a goal and she needs to be very competitive. That's what just feeds her. And so she's found a group of, elite runners that she can be with online. They challenge each other. They really, really all need that kind of stimulus. I'm much more of a calmer personality type, so I run more for mental health and peace. And I still like to win a race once in a while, but it's been a while. We're so competitive, but at the back of the pack. But I'm not looking for the same thing. So I'm much more looking for um, fellowship and camaraderie and the people who enjoy that joy of just the pure movement. And there's lots of overlap. But I think what I'm trying to say is just you have to find what works for you. I'm offering you the three tools that are probably the most beneficial to me: writing, meditation, and movement. And within those, there's everything. I think the women that have presented so far in this festival and the ones that are going to present are offering you many of these things. I have been enjoying some of the presentations I've watched, and I'm really looking forward to a few more. Um, but I think my motto right now is one size does not fit all. I know that um, I sometimes want to take the wrong medicine, so I think, oh no. I mean, I would never have thought of myself as a marathoner. That is just not the tool I would have gone to. And it's turned out to be something. I like to say that it saved my life, and I really believe it did because I was in a very bad place when I started. But I still go back to those tools of writing and meditation. And I'll say one last thing. Your movement can be a meditation. Pick a focus before each workout, each movement sessions. Let's not even call them workouts. Each movement session. Pick a focus, whether it's a body part or a technique or a visual thing or sound. Pick that and bring your mind back again and again and again. And that makes it meditation, and especially dropping the judgment. With writing practice, drop the judgment. Notice, oh, isn't that interesting? My mind wants to criticize me again. There it is again. Interesting. With meditation, same thing. My mind is doing its job. It's thinking thoughts. There I go again. Okay, let's bring it back. With the running, I might have chosen I'm going to run in the woods. Let's listen for bird sounds. Can I just be open to them without grabbing for them? Notice them if they arise. Notice the space if there aren't any. Just notice and be where I'm at. Bring my mind back. When I start thinking about the grocery list, bring my mind back again and again and again. Or maybe it's not the grocery list. Maybe it's, that you're CEO of a huge corporation and you've got 1,200 employees. Whatever the thing is for you, it will distract you. You will bring your mind back. So I want to thank you so much for taking the time to listen. I hope that I've shared something that will be helpful. I put a blog post in the post there about self-care, which is again just my experience. That's really all I try to share. I have all these degrees and things, but my experience is the thing that has been most helpful to the people I have worked with. So I wish you well, and please take care. Thank you again.